Greetings. This presentation will introduce and outline ExxonMobil's compliance plan.
Exxon-Valdez is strongly committed to its mission, vision, and values. Our mission is working tirelessly to provide exceptional service to our operating communities throughout the world while prioritizing the safety of the environment and our employees. Our vision is to bring inspiration and innovation to the transport of oil throughout the world while causing no unnecessary harm to humanity or the environment. And lastly, as reflected in our statements of values, Exxon is committed to excellence, accountability, and transparency at every level of our organization. We actively recruit without discrimination to attract only the finest, most well-qualified people. We recognize the inherent danger of our work and prioritize safety and integrity. The men and women of Exxon are our most valuable assets.
The employee conduct section focuses on what is expected from employees overall in regards to the entire compliance plan. The first section, which is the most vital, is communication. Every employee is expected to have open communication within and between other employees. This includes questions, concerns, inquiries, etc., and all with the purpose of preventing any course of action which could potentially lead to a hazard or violate the law. This is important since in the past, Exxon lacked communication between the employees inside and outside the ship, which led to poor decisions that caused the oil spill. Apart from that, it is important for the employees to stay in compliance and make sure to report any failure or violation of the compliance plan, even if it's not a personal one. Employees are expected to not only follow the compliance law, but also make sure their fellow teammates are doing so as well. If not, they would be considered an accomplice to the violation. In the past, Exxon employees have seen crewmates violate the code of conduct, such as working while intoxicated and not reported to the management. In fact, in the oil spilling scenario, it was demonstrated that there was a common practice of drinking, as Captain Murphy testified that he smelled alcohol on the breath of Captain Hazelwood and made no comment about it until later on, and even stated that it was a common practice of both the officers and crew of oil tankers to drink while in port. From now on, it will be important for them to do so, to communicate, and in that way everyone push each other to do better. This leads to the final segment, which is report violations. These can be done in an anonymous manner if anyone wants to prevent problems by giving their identity. It is also important to let know all the employees that the plan goes and is applicable to all Exxon employees, even upper management and the board of directors.
Policies and procedures. All personnel are required to read and acknowledge the current and updated policies and procedures via signature as well as when hired. All Exxon-Valdez personnel and affiliates are expected and required to adhere to the high standards of ethical conduct and are obligated to comply with and assist in practicing the observance of all applicable laws and regulations of both local and federal governments, as well as Exxon-Valdez. Failure to comply with the following policy and procedure updates will result in disciplinary action. This can include consequential actions such as suspension, required training, and/or termination. Drugs and alcohol. No alcoholic or drug-related paraphernalia or substances are permitted on board any fleet. The use, possession, and consumption of drug and alcohol on board the fleet, whether currently on the clock or off, is strictly prohibited. This ensures that all crew members and personnel are ready and prepared in the event of emergency and, in certain cases, taking command. Pre-boarding requirements. Prior to boarding, a breathalyzer is required and must be passed in order to board and embark on any job. Any personnel that records a BAC higher than the appropriate legal amount or within a threshold of the limit is prohibited from boarding the vessel and will be subject to disciplinary action. Operating the vessel as well as working in other capacities under the influence of drugs or alcohol can hinder the efficiency and safety of operations and is strictly enforced. Licensed personnel. The only authorized personnel to operate the vessels and pilot the ships in the channels are to be licensed captains. If a member of the crew would like to receive further training to be licensed to operate other facets of the ship, requests can be made via a supervisor. Otherwise, under no circumstance should non-licensed crew members engage in piloting the ship in any capacity, unless instructed to do so by appropriate governing authorities during an emergency situation. Overtime. Hourly requirements and restrictions have been reformatted to better the health and wellness of personnel. Overtime must be requested and approved based on current scheduled hours to ensure any individual crew members receive the proper rest and reset needed to be capable of operating the vessels. Enough crew will be scheduled to work any given shift to aid in allowing enough time to each member to avoid the potential of excessive overtime. Oil spills. At least one certified oil spill expert must be present on the tanker crew at all times. In the event of an oil-related emergency and/or spill, an expert will be on site to assist with proper protocol and procedures. Experts will be knowledgeable of response criteria, as well as proper parties to contact, assessment levels, and plans to put in place while emergency responses are awaited on. Reporting non-compliance. If a member of the crew is associated with, overhears, or is aware of any crew members in non-compliance of any and all Exxon-Valdez policies or procedures and does not report wrongdoings, crew members will be subject to disciplinary action, including, but not limited to, suspension and/or termination. Crew members are expected to immediately report violations or concerns to supervisors. Reports can be made anonymously.
Our group thought a major problem with this legal case is that it seemed like no one was truly prepared and employees were all over the place. This situation could be a result of no correct training programs or very little training. Our group thought it was crucial to add and define training programs that Exxon-Valdez can ensure that all employees will be required to take. I started with an orientation training program. This program is a very basic introduction to the company. I found it important. Like I stated before, it seemed like the crew on the oil tanker was disorganized. The orientation will introduce the company's mission statement, which is to basically prioritize to work effectively and ensure that the environment stays clean and safe. This will help implement what employees should strive to do. If the situation arises again, they will be able to take the situation more seriously. The second training program will be soft skills development. This will help employees improve on their soft skills. However, the skills I will be highlighting due to this case are communication, leadership, and teamwork skills. These skills seem to be lacking the most. For example, when it comes to communication for this case, there seem to be several holes in the story. For example, the autopilot part of the case comes in mind for this, as no one seems to know that if the ship was on autopilot or not. On the other hand, we have lack of leadership skills due to the captain being intoxicated, clearly to other employees, and also handing off the wheel to someone who was not licensed. Additionally, they lack teamwork skills. This is shown when the lookout was not in their proper position and the captain left an unlicensed pilot on his own, which seems like setting your own crew up for failure. In the mix of communication skills and teamwork skills, I think it would be important to involve conflict resolutions. Maybe due to the tiredness and drunkenness of the crew, some employees were too afraid to speak up and did not want to make the environment hostile. So Exxon-Valdez can have a section dedicated to conflict resolution and how to handle that situation. Workplace substance abuse is also another training program intended to highlight how drugs and alcohol can affect your employees and work environment, including examples of potential risk that can happen. This seems important to convey to employees because the company should want all employees in their clear rightful mind so their reaction time is at their best. Another program we added was workplace safety. This will explain that it is important to be trained properly and go over the safety procedures, since in this case, safety procedures seem to be ignored. For instance, putting the ship on autopilot on a non-open sea. Also, none of them were oil disaster experts, so none of the crew members were trained properly for this situation. Technical skill development will be one of the final training programs that I will be highlighting. This is important because none of the crew members seem to know how to work a crane or a forklift. Exxon-Valdez should want most, not if all employees, to be trained on important technology and equipment. This program will help introduce and expand employees' knowledge on technical equipment, including on keeping them updated on new equipment as well. We decided that quarterly audits will help to ensure every training plan is taken seriously. If the crewmates already had all this training supposedly done, it seems like it wasn't implemented well enough. Exxon-Valdez should take responsibility to ensure all their employees are trained thoroughly, and audits will definitely help.
Be presenting today on Exxon's commitment to being completely transparent and being an equal opportunity employer, because that is our priority here. So let's begin with transparency. So in order for our customers to be up to date on what's going on here at Exxon, whether it be new developments or ideas or processes that are being placed, because we like to be as transparent as possible with our clients, we have many outlets in which a client could see that information. Because our goal here is to be able to let the client know first before they find out through other outlets. So let's begin with social media. We have a Twitter account, Facebook, and Instagram account, and through there, we'll keep you updated on any new developments, as I said, or anything that has to do with the company. If the client then does not have any social media, then we go on to email. If you opt in for email alerts, we'll do the same thing that we do through social media, but we'll send you email alerts. And lastly, we will also have an option in which you can have any mail updates. So we'll send you any updates on anything that is going on with the company that may be major, or anything that will help you as a client with us. Our goal basically here is to show that we are not hiding anything and that we are willing to display as much information as we can so you, the client, can feel comfortable doing business with us. Now, when it comes to us being an equal opportunity employer, we do not discriminate at all, and we treat everyone the same, and we want our clients to know that. So let's begin with our diversity and inclusion. We make it a point to hire anybody of any sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, what it may be. We do not hold any promotions. We don't hire for any of those reasons. Everybody is treated the same, no matter your race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and we make it a point for everybody to know that here. We also host team events so our teams can go ahead and meet each other and have the opportunity to learn more about other cultures and be culturally aware. And with that, we also do workshops. And in those workshops, what we do is that we teach about how we can become more of a team and learn how to deal with other cultures than ones that we may know. Because in the end here at Exxon, not only are we a team, but our team and our clients, we're all a family. And it's important for everybody to know that. And with this, we want you to know that here at Exxon, we care about everybody, our clients, our team, and we work together to make this company better.
In regards to the environmental protections, it is important to discuss several organizational environmental compliance efforts that effectively regulate and manage these circumstances in the event of expected and unexpected natural disasters, such as the Exxon-Valdez incident. The spill response procedures under Exxon first involve asking the 5 core questions. Can you identify what spilled in specific terms? Can you identify the consequences and hazards of the spilled material? Can you determine if the spill covers the surrounding area? Does the spill pose a danger to the people or property in the area of disaster, considering the prospect of health, fire, or explosion potential and interference? And is the watercraft equipped with the proper tangible tools and resources for you to address and remedy the area's spill? If the answer is no to any of these, it is important for any witness to report the incident to an experienced, qualified, and trained land consultant who will assess the situation, document the incident, and respond appropriately to the spill. Furthermore, to handle unexpected contamination in Exxon property, plant, and equipment, it is also important for personnel to identify and report any materials that contain, but are not limited to, unusual tints or odors, chance of materials containing lead or mercury, and hidden soils or pollution within the substances. The investigation will be recorded and archived in a land and water contamination assessment report, and any necessary remediation measures will be taken into serious consideration. All ExxonMobil employees are required to undergo hazardous waste operation training that could expose them to hazardous and toxic chemical substances prior to participation and/or supervision of field activities with health and safety barriers. On-site workers involved in hazardous substance removal activities that may expose workers to health hazards must receive instruction within a minimum of 7 days prior to the actual fieldwork attendance under the immediate surveillance of an experienced and trained supervisor. Workers on temporary field activities such as water or land monitoring must receive a minimum of 48 hours of instruction off-site under the same surveillance measures, and workers who have previously worked in sites where respirators and similar personal protective equipment are not necessary under instances of duress or emergencies must receive a minimum of 24 hours of instruction off-site under the same surveillance circumstances. It is also important to minimize air, dust, and water emissions during construction and field activities through a quality control program designed to include real-time documentation of particulate matter emissions levels, along with the surveillance of geophysical conditions. Furthermore, the main deliverables and goals established by Exxon following every field and on-site activity is to commit towards the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and target safe carbon regulations, ensure the safety of tools, kits, and resources available to every on-site worker, certify that the energy efficiency rates are utilized at the standard clean level in Exxon power plant and equipment units, establish that the methods and applications used to estimate the pollutants and emissions levels are accurate, and construct a low-cost, detailed approach that incorporates efficient energy solutions and minimizes the presence of construction material waste in response to energy conservation efforts. The disciplinary policy will be administered and enforced in a procedural and fair process, applied equally across the workplace hierarchy from general staff, managers, executives, and board members. The verdict of disciplinary issues or cases regarding general employees will be first determined through a formal process established by the HR department, the department director, and the compliance officer. For executives, the verdict will be determined by the CEO, director of HR, the compliance officer only when they are not involved in the specific compliance issue, and the board of directors when appropriate. For board members, the verdict will be decided by the executive committee only when they are not involved in the specific compliance issue. The discipline efforts granted to an individual will depend on the degree of violation severity in the order of verbal warning, written warning, employment suspension with or without pay for a window of up to 10 regularly scheduled workdays, demotion, and termination. If a verbal or written warning is issued, the factors for the decision will be included in the document. If a formal suspension from employment is issued, there will be a pending investigation by an internal counsel body that evaluates the legality of the case as well as reviews evidence for this misconduct or wrongdoing. An employee will be demoted or deployed from their current role if the role is not suitable for the employee following employment assessment reviews. An employee will be terminated if there is evidence found regarding their involvement in workplace misconduct and unethical behavior and decision-making.
The sixth component of this compliance plan is the reporting of violations and misconduct. Exxon-Valdez is committed to strict compliance with all laws, rules, and regulations and a corporate culture that values and promotes honesty, integrity, and transparency in all of its operations. Exxon-Valdez requires all operations to be performed in accordance with policy and procedure and all applicable federal and state regulations. Exxon-Valdez has taken steps to prevent and detect all non-compliant practices, including but not limited to the implementation of strong internal controls and an ongoing auditing and monitoring system. It is required that all employees, managers, executives, volunteers, contractors, subcontractors, vendors, and other agents share in the responsibility of preventing, detecting, and reporting suspected incidents of abuse or other potential acts of misconduct or wrongdoing. All employees, managers, executives, contractors, and agents are required to report suspected compliance issues, concerns, or violations. This means reporting any conduct or activity that a reasonable person might suspect is a violation of the compliance plan, code of conduct, policy, or procedure, or federal or state law. Some examples of compliance issues for which reports must be made include, but are not limited to, submission of a false claim or report, failure to comply with policies and procedures, instances of abuse or other potential misconduct or wrongdoing, violations of any laws, rules, or regulations, acts of intimidation or retaliation taken against an individual in an effort to deter the individual from reporting a compliance concern and/or violation, or for participating and cooperating with the compliance issue investigation. Participation in non-compliant behavior or encouraging, directing, facilitating, or permitting non-compliant behavior is strictly prohibited and may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Failure to report, disclose, or assist in the investigation of any potential wrongdoing is a breach of an employee's, manager's, executives, contractors, or agents' duty to Exxon-Valdez and may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Individuals within the organization who, by virtue of their position within the organization, should have known but failed to discover such conduct will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Any employee, manager, executive, contractor, or other agent who suspects any violation of the compliance plan, code of conduct, policies and procedures, or laws, rules, and regulations is required to immediately notify Exxon-Valdez. Reports can be made as set forth below: contacting their supervisor or another manager to the extent they are not involved, contacting the compliance officer directly, or by calling the Exxon-Valdez Confidential Compliance Hotline. Exxon-Valdez will swiftly and thoroughly investigate all allegations or suspicions of abuse or other potential acts of misconduct or wrongdoing. All employees, managers, executives, contractors, or other agents are required to assist in the investigation as needed. Every attempt will be made to correct and prevent any abuse, misconduct, or wrongdoing.
The purpose for this risk assessment is to promote the identification, evaluation, and management of potential risks involved and create a quick and effective response to emergency situations. Identify potential hazards. Every employee will understand the severity of transporting hazardous cargo and will take appropriate steps in efforts to mitigate potential environmental disasters. Steps we will take in the mitigation process include regular checking and documenting any problems with equipment, regular recording various daily operations, relaying and documenting accurate information to the proper personnel, ensuring that employees are properly trained in response to emergency situations. Management will ensure each employee is licensed and legally authorized to operate in designated positions. Management will ensure that an adequate number of on-duty employees at all times. Management will also ensure that each employee signs and is in full compliance with the rules and regulations, and we will maintain full compliance with sailing standards, laws, and regulations. Okay, evaluating potential risks. Employees will be able to evaluate risk involved and how to respond in the event an emergency situation occurs that threatens the health and safety of the general public and the environment. These include estimate probability and the potential hazards involved in the event of system failure, classify potential risks in accordance with the company's risk matrix model, perform a qualitative and quantitative analysis involving the probability and impact rating system on the various risks involved, understand how to document potential risks, and effectively communicate necessary information to the proper personnel. The ability of employees to properly assess, evaluate, and understand the severity involved with various factors that lead to emergencies will not only allow for better awareness and prevention, but a more effective response time in emergency situations as well. We will move on to the whistleblower protection policy. At Exxon-Valdez, we encourage employees and various staff members to raise concerns within the organization when an unlawful or unethical situation occurs. All employees have an obligation to report any unethical or unlawful activity. Our retaliation policy includes any employee of Exxon-Valdez reporting a violation acting in good faith shall not be subject to retaliation by a superior, coworker, or any other affiliate of the organization. These violations include fraud, discrimination, unlawful practice, or a direct violation of the company's code of conduct. on. The procedure will involve employees with concerns will address their immediate supervisor or manager. Supervisors and managers will report allegations to the compliance officer, and after this, the compliance officer will conduct a thorough investigation, and any employee who makes an allegation knowing to be false is subject to disciplinary action. We understand the need for employees to remain anonymous during the investigation process and will maintain efforts to ensure confidentiality to the extent possible and consistent with conducting an adequate investigation. And then after receiving a complaint, the investigation process will begin as soon as possible, and any findings that warrant corrective action shall be addressed and corrected immediately.
Due to the lack of response from both Exxon employees as well as Alaska, it is vital that the recovery teams are given more importance as well as a different approach. For this reason, there will be 5 different offices around the country focused completely on the training and planning of the recovery team as well as auditing that the necessary resources are being held. These offices will have veteran representatives that are preparing more youthful specialists that will be part of the recovery team. Additionally, all new laborers are expected to go through obligatory multi-month training so that they are familiar with different errands and possess different skills needed for them to be part of the crew. This will lead to the next section, which is dual positions. Every crew member will have its original role but also have a dual role, which makes them normal crewmates but also members of the recovery team, which requires knowledge and tools to help resolve incidents. And this is very important because in the past the crew was not as deep or as trained to solve this incident, and therefore they were understaffed when it came to the incidents, and that led to slow responses. The Alaska supervision is probably the most important part of the whole recovery team. In the past, Alaska was understaffed and under-resourced. There were many missing members of the recovery team, and that led to a late next day response, and the following resources were low, such as only 1 barge was available at the time, and at least 2 should be at all times. Replacement parts were not kept in stock, and equipment breakdowns were common as the machines were not designed to work on the emulsified mixture of oil and water that was formed rapidly through the actions of the uncontained spill, and many other resources were not available at the time. For this reason, Exxon will now have to program outages that will make sure that Alaska stays competent and helps the recovery team. Finally, the section of worker diligence means that the recovery team itself will make sure that actions of the crew members have to be approved and that they follow the certain code of conduct. For example, the oil spill could have been prevented if Captain Hazelwood would have stuck to the original plan. At least, if he radioed and waited for a confirmation, then things could have been prevented. For this reason, the recovery team is also in charge of auditing and supervising the conduct of employees and will be punishing workers who fail to follow their roles. Examples of these failures in the past are that in the oil spill, command was given to the 3rd mate despite him not having a license to pilot a ship. This demonstrated negligence from the captain. Sailing rules were ignored as Captain Hazelwood did not advise the Coast Guard that he altered the course even further to the south of other inbound shipping lanes and into waters close to the reef. And for this reason, a recovery team that is not only prepared for these incidents but also help audit and prevent conducts that lead to these incidents is necessary.
In conclusion, the principles mentioned in this compliance plan guide Exxon-Valdez and its employees, directors, and vendors. These principles allow Exxon-Valdez and its associates to fulfill and abide by the mission statement and provide the public with oil for retail and commercial purposes. Exxon-Valdez will continuously strive to provide its services in an environmentally safe, ethically friendly, and economically efficient way by adhering to the principles outlined in this corporate compliance plan. Thank you.